Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Carver Conservation Commission meeting for Wednesday, December 7th, 2022. Our order of business tonight starts with discussions and business. The first discussion is a letter to close the Pine Gate enforcement order. Pine Gate is the company that was working on the solar project, two projects, one on Tremont Street and the other on Rochester Road. To refresh people's memory, they're the ones that had the wooden piles in the bogs that are now gone. So there's a copy of the letter in front of all the members. So if you're okay with it, we can vote on sending this to them. This basically removes the enforcement order because everything we asked them to do with the wooden poles has been completed.
And I did have the attorneys at Pine Gate look at this, and they were okay with it. I'm just waiting to hear from the town's council, KP Law, to get their 2 cents worth. But so far, everybody's positive on this letter.
All right.
In light of that, should we table the vote?
No, I think we can vote pending. I think there's another reason to table the vote, and I apologize for not having read this all sooner. I think that we need another short paragraph indicating that we required the results of the testing, the soil testing,
right, sure,
before we approve this letter. That'll give KP Law time to look at it as well.
Yep.
So,
if we could be, excuse me, furnished the results before the next meeting so that we have time to study it individually,
yeah,
that'd be great.
yeah. So we can call Julie. I don't know. We can put this off till January if we need to, because the next meeting, if we do it, is going to be Christmas week.
Right.
And as of right now, do we have any other?
Yeah, we do. I put
Stanley.
it. Let's see. 5 Stanley wants to come before us the 21st.
All right. Can we double check with them and make sure they're definitely going to be ready?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, because if they can wait another 2 weeks till the first week in January,
Okay.
I mean, that's a pretty minor thing to have us all come in for one
All right.
meeting.
I'll email him tomorrow and let you guys know.
If he insists on the 21st, I mean, if they're talking about putting in a pool, they're not going to need it now.
Right. No, I'll check.
So,
Yep.
all right. What I'm trying to do is avoid us having to have a meeting that's going to be 5 minutes on the 21st of December.
I'm a big fan of your initiative.
Okay, so we'll see what happens. Because the other thing that might have happened was the RDA, the property from the RDA on Wade Street, and that's not time sensitive either. So if we can move both of those till January, then we can get a day off. So since this is just a discussion, we don't need a motion. We'll just make amendments to this letter and look at it again at our next meeting.
Yep. That's why it's a draft.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. Next up on the agenda is the changes to the bylaw. We're going to move that to the end of the meeting because that's going to be. It could be a bit of a long discussion. So we can move right to our hearings. Actually, tonight, the first continued public hearing, 5 Stanley Lane. There's been a request by the applicant at 5 Stanley Lane for a continuance until December 21st, which again may be continued until January 4th. Is it? I think something like that. First Wednesday in January.
It is the 4th.
Okay, so we don't need to do anything with 5 Stanley Lane. The next one is our new public hearing at 24 Indian Street. Notice is hereby given. This is NOI SE 126656. Notice is hereby given in accordance with the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, MGL Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Carver Wetlands Protection Bylaw, Citation 9.2, that a public hearing will be held at 7:00 p.m. on Wednesday, December 7th, 2022, in Meeting Room 1 at Carver Town Hall to hear the notice of intent submitted by the J. McKinnon Company, Incorporated, for the construction of a single-family dwelling, grading, well, and utilities within the 100-foot buffer zone of the bordering vegetated wetland. This project is located at 24 Indian Street, Carver, Massachusetts, map 93, lot 1-6. All interested parties are invited to attend. Good evening.
Good
How are you?
evening, members of the commission. My name is Paul Bakis with Grady Consulting on behalf of the applicant, J. McKinnon Company. As you have just described, this is for a notice of intent for the construction of a single-family dwelling at 24 Indian Street in Carver. The wetlands were delineated by South River Environmental on September 22nd of 2022. The proposed design has no impervious surfaces within the 100-foot buffer. The work within the 100-foot buffer is mainly for site grading and the construction of a well, which needs to be located more than 150 feet from the septic system. The septic system is located in the front of the property, outside the 100-foot buffer as well. And with that, I guess I can open it. For erosion control, a 12-inch diameter silt sock is controlled along the limits of work within the 100-foot buffer, and conservation posts are proposed at the proposed limit of clearing, which is the 65-foot no disturb buffer, in accordance with Carver's requirements. I guess with that, I can open it up to any questions you may have.
We were out there for a site visit yesterday morning.
Yes, we were.
Three of us were, and it was pretty clear where this is all going. Looking at the plans, keeping everything out of the 65 feet is great. Keeping the house itself out of the 100 feet is great. It's the kinds of things that we're looking for, and I know with the other houses along Indian Street that you've come to know what to expect from us from a certain standpoint. So looking at this, I really don't have any problems with this at all. I think this is a good design. It's a good use of the space, and it protects what we're here to protect. So I don't have any questions on this one. Does anybody else? Anyone else see anything that?
One thing, it's in terms of practice. I know we've been approving wells within the 100, and very often I've been seeing wells dug right up to the 65, and I'm always talking about our concerns with protecting our resources as being a three-dimensional issue, and while it's nothing that we can currently we don't have anything bylaw-wise to say why we can't do that, as far as I know. But it's one of those things that as we begin to start to set precedent, I'd like us to start considering that the 65 and the 100-foot relationship is one that I'm always looking. When I give a variance, it's because of either people have a hardship, but not a self-imposed one, and a hardship isn't just a hardship because somebody purchased a property that doesn't fit the square footage of where the setbacks need to be, but in terms of strictly I don't really care how big a house is, but what I do care about is the wells or the straw, as it were, where that goes into the ground, and we've got it right up against the 65, and for that I'd like us to consider, if not this case, to have it be a point of discussion for when we're discussing bylaws later, to consider moving that line. If we're going to be champions of protecting our resources in town, that being our single source aquifer, one of the biggest steps could be tightening up those restrictions. That's all I have to say about that.
Okay. In this case, I think we have not had many proposals in front of us where the well has been at the 65. We've had quite a number where the well has been within the 65, and they've needed a variance for the wells. And our feeling all along has been that once you set a well, that for the most part, it's very low maintenance, and other than a pathway to get access to it, if it's within the 65 feet, there's very little residual damage, and things grow back. In this particular case, if you look at the septic system in the front of the house, they're at the minimum setback from the street. And also the septic is a minimum 150 feet from the wellhead. So in this particular case, it is where it pretty much needs to be. I don't see much of a problem with the well here. We've certainly allowed wells within the 65 foot with a lawnmower's width path back to them. So this being outside the 65 feet, nothing in this plan requires a variance. So from that standpoint, I'm happy with the fact that this is the way that this house has been designed to fit this land and to fit the wetlands that are on it. So,
Okay.
but yeah, but in our discussion about the bylaws later, yes, that's certainly an area that can and will come up. And I'm not far away from what you're thinking. So anyway, we're talking about this one. Did you see anything?
No, technically, it meets everything. And granted, it's only 5 feet, but it still is 5 feet outside of the 65 foot. So it's not right on top of it. So when they drill a well, the tailings and everything usually stay right by the hole. So it's not, like, Savory said, it's not too bad for what it is.
Yeah, again, I don't want to turn this into a hydrology 101, but anytime, for lack of a better way of putting it, every time we stick a straw in the ground, we're cross-contaminating strata. And
I understand.
yeah, so and it's sort of like it's almost like think of it in terms of like medication. A lot of people can figure out how your body reacts to one. Sometimes 2 medications. You get beyond three medications, then who knows? And so as we put more and more straws in the ground, and acknowledging where the gradient is directing, I think it's something to seriously look at potentially, because there's a lot of things that we don't know, and this isn't as a reaction to anything. I think I've been fairly consistent with these points. So it's not an emotional thing I bring up. It's something I've brought to this committee and others for.
Right, but yeah, in this particular case, the location of the well is not related to the size of the home. It's related to the positioning of the septic.
Sorry, the only thing I was just going to add, because I know, everybody in this body cares about what we're doing, and despite views that we may or may not have on an issue, differences, or sometimes we agree on things, we're bound to follow the existing set of bylaws. So, however this goes, it's one of those things where I know that we want to be consistent with our voting, but if things evolve, then maybe that your timing is good in this case. So.
Dan, don't forget too, Commission's hands are tied by the Commonwealth's, Wetlands Protection Act. Too.
Right.
We're just dealing with the surface.
Right. Yeah, we have, and this is really for the audience.
Okay.
watching.
Well, no, just to state it.
Yeah, but we have a lane, no matter what our opinions are. I think to the chagrin of Alan when he's here, I've mentioned that everybody's both equally and important and worthless in my eyes, because I have to look at the bylaws and not really care about people's feelings so much.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm done, I promise.
Okay, sure.
I do have a question for you, actually. See the swale over here on the right-hand side there?
Yep.
Is that gonna, I'm just curious, is water from the road gonna, like salt water from, winters and stuff, gonna flow into the wetlands there? If we could, that 97 contour, if you could swing it, kind of have it mimic the natural contour that's underneath there? You see that? See the dashed contour, the 97-foot one down there?
Are you referring to up by the road or?
Yeah, up by the road, sort of. See how you have the 97 go way up to the road?
Okay, yeah.
When grading, if you could maybe swing it a little, so there's a little bit of a area.
So you can make a berm.
A little bit of a berm
Yeah,
to
make a
keep,
berm.
to keep
Yeah,
road,
like a-
road water from washing down into the wetlands.
Yep.
Because salt
Yeah.
water is not good, for that stuff.
Yeah, that would be a good idea.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's
Good
because right
thought.
now there's existing. We walked over there. There's a little bit of a rise there, and there's that little depression there. That's the only
Yeah.
thing. If we could maybe that
Yeah.
might help a little bit.
We'll get a strip of like 98 feet, just
Yeah,
that'll
I think
keep
you
the,
just swing that 97 over where the existing 97 is. See underneath there. That might keep it more natural. See how the
yeah,
that's the only thing. Okay, thank you.
I'll put it in the special conditions.
Okay, thanks.
okay. Anybody else? All right, I will entertain a motion to close the hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and second to close the hearing on 24 Indian Street, SE 126656. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none?
No.
It's, no?
No.
Okay, so it's 3-1. All right, I will accept a motion to approve the NOI for 24 Indian Street, SE 126656.
So moved.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and second to approve the NOI for SC 126656. Any conditions?
The standard conditions, but like I said, the one that Dave mentioned about the berm up near the road,
All right.
I will make that a condition.
All right, we're going to put a berm on the 97-foot mark on the north border to help ensure that runoff from the road does not enter the swale and into the wetlands.
Correct, and they also have on the plan 3 conservation signs
Yep.
as well. I'll also put that in the conditions.
All right, very good. All right, so it's been moved and seconded to approve the notice of intent. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. All right, it's 4-0, and we're all done.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
As a matter of fact, yes. Yes, you did. Thanks for reminding me right there. Thank you.
Now we gotta yell because the HVAC kicked on.
I knew I had one. Okay.
It takes a minute.
Okay.
to turn it on.
I'm impressed there.
My Elmo drawing?
You took some time to do it.
I do. I learned
You
today.
know, sorry today. But you know what? I'm gonna take it to Florida. That's what it is. It's done.
Thank you.
I know it's loud.
Right, it's override, bring the temperature down
Down,
below
and
the
hit done.
room temperature and hit done. Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Back to the discussion, the changes in the bylaw. Now, I'm going to go on memory from this because unfortunately I did not, I thought I would have time between my earlier meeting and this meeting to go home and get what I had done, but that didn't happen. So I am I do not have what I wanted to bring with me tonight, but I will go from memory. And I have comments from Mr. Germain on this draft, and I have comments from Mr. Hall and Dan. Any comments that you have, you can voice.
Thank you.
As we discuss this.
Okay.
The first thing I want to say overall about the bylaw is that when we last went in front of town meeting to change the conservation bylaw, the entire bylaw was placed as an appendix at the end of town meeting, and everybody had to refer to that. And that became a bit of a nuisance to everybody, and I think that in the end of the day, that people just voted no, so they wouldn't have to keep referring back to the entire bylaw. So I think what we need to do in this particular case is what other articles have what has been done with other articles at town meeting, where we identify what the changes are and have them read off. And if somebody in the audience has an issue with one of the articles, we come back and talk with one of the changes, we come back and talk about it. But if there are changes that no one says anything about at town meeting, then they automatically become approved if the article is approved. So basically what it is, it becomes an a la carte menu of these changes instead of an all or nothing. So
they can choose and pick which ones they will approve.
yes, we go through the ones, and if there are no comments on on some of them, then those become yeses if the entire package is approved. If people have questions on other things, they can be discussed then and there.
At the town meeting.
At the town meeting, and withdrawn if need be. And each of these could be voted on separately. So, let's say we have A through F. If A, B, D, and E don't have any comments, then we can vote on those. And if the town says yes, then they become a part of the bylaws, and C and F have conversations about them, and then separate votes. So those, let's say both of those fail. Then 4 of the 6 changes that we would want are in, and the other 2 are out. Does everyone understand what we're going to do there? All right, so very quickly. And there are a couple of things here that we're just going to eliminate from this year's town meeting because they were contentious a couple of years ago, and we'll just they aren't really necessary for. They're somewhat. It would be nice to have them, but they're not dire. On page 1, under 9.2.1.2, purpose, the change here is adding invasive species. And it basically says the purpose of the bylaw is to protect the wetlands by controlling activities deemed by the Carver Conservation Commission likely to have a significant or cumulative effect upon wetlands values, including but not limited to the following. And it goes through the list that's already there, but it also now includes invasive species.
Okay.
So is everyone okay with that? We'll do that. On the next one, 9.2.1.3. It's not listed on this, but under number 2, it says, except as permitted by the commission as provided by this bylaw, no person shall remove, fill, dredge, alter, or build upon or within 200 feet on each side of a perennial rivers and streams. And what I've added there is vernal pools. Because the importance of vernal pools has become noticed by the state, and there are other communities have changed that designation to treat a vernal pool like a riverfront. So the area of our jurisdiction would go from 100 feet to 200 feet.
Does it have to be a certified vernal pool, or can it have the characteristics of a vernal pool?
It would have to have it doesn't have to be certified. I was reading in the MGL, that the characteristics of a vernal pool can be brought to the attention by anybody.
That's right.
So you don't have to be the landowner. If you have proof, which includes photographs and information about the flora that's there, if you have video or audio recordings
Right.
of wildlife, the frogs in the spring, then that is enough to have it certified. So, if there becomes an issue like that, if it has all the characteristics that make it a vernal pool, then it would be included in this bylaw.
Do you want to say potential vernal pool and certified then, or?
No.
Okay, just throwing it out there.
Um,
Because that would cover the characteristics of.
Well, a vernal pool is a vernal pool whether it's certified or not, correct?
Yeah, it's just not certified.
Right, so maybe we say a vernal pool certified or not,
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
opposed to potential.
right, exactly.
Because if it is, it is.
Right, yeah.
And
All
if
right.
it is.
Just so you can declare it.
Right, and if it is, then it's afforded all the protections that a certified vernal pool would
Yes.
have.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, that works.
Okay.
So before we go on, on section 1, that same.
Yes,
We talk about the 100-foot buffer, right?
Yes.
It kind of leads into what probably Dan wants to talk about.
yes.
I think we got to clarify what is done if you're going to do something within the 100-foot buffer. It's obvious that you need a variance to do it in the 65, right? But in the 100-foot, it's a little foggy to me anyway as to what an individual has to do if they want to do some kind of activity in the 100-foot buffer. Should we clarify it here, or is it not?
I
not
think
something-
if you look at the last pages
Right,
under definitions,
right. Variance, it talks about that. Yeah.
no, there's also a definition of alter.
Uh-huh. Where is that now?
Under definitions, 9.2.5, last page.
Last page, yeah.
Yep. Lower left-hand corner.
Yep, I see it.
All right? Because the bylaw states, and this is right off of the Mass General Law. This is pulled verbatim,
Right.
what we have here from Mass General Law. No person shall remove, fill, dredge, alter, and alter's the word that is all-encompassing.
Yeah, it's your catch-all.
Right.
Yeah, all right, so, if it's not removing, filling, dredging, but it is altering, then that comes under our purview. So the definition of alter is pretty, pretty succinct in
Okay.
what you're allowed to do.
Right, so if you do alter that though, you don't need a variance in the 100-foot.
You don't need a variance, you need our permission.
Right, so that's kind of what I want to clarify. What does an individual have to do if they want to do something? And what administratively, what they have to do? They have to come here, we have to, issue orders of conditions or something like that, rather
They
than
would
a
have to
variance.
file either an RDA or an NOI.
Yeah,
And don't forget, it doesn't mean they can't do something in the
Right.
100-foot buffer. It just means they're minimizing and doing the best they can to do husbandry to the land.
right, so
That's-
that's
and
kind
we make
of why
sure
I
of
wanted
that.
to say something like that in there, so it was clear.
Well, the first lines
Yeah.
of that
Right,
is except as permitted
Permitted.
by the commission.
right,
So right away, the first thing is that they need our permission to do anything
Right.
within the 100 feet. That
Right.
would include removing, filling, dredging, and altering. And then you refer to the alteration definition for
Right.
everything else that's
Right.
disallowed. Or not disallowed, but which they need to come to us for permission to do.
and that permission is given in the form of order of conditions, right? Is that right?
Yes, or a,
RDA.
or an RDA.
They get a negative
That's
determination.
the only thing is, should we say something so it's very specific in there or not, or should we just leave it the way it is? I mean, you mean, because so it'd be really clear what you need to do if you're gonna do anything between the 60 and the 5 and the
I think by saying that except as permitted by the
Uh-huh.
commission, then that
That
tells
covers
the
that?
applicant that they need to come in and find out what their options are.
Right.
And again, this is direct language right out of the Mass General
Right.
Law, which I'm a little hesitant to change,
I
alter,
understand.
dredge,
Yeah, I got you.
remove, fill.
Right, right.
And Dave, it gives you guys some leeway too
Yeah.
to make a decision.
Okay, yeah.
You know,
I just
you,
wanna-
you guys need some latitude.
Yeah, sometimes, but I just want to make it clear to the individuals that are
Right.
applying what they're
Well,
what they're in for.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
You tell them like
Right.
you're doing right now.
Yeah. So I guess we just do it on an individual basis and not. worry
Yeah, we
about
do,
it.
but
Yeah,
the key
yeah.
words are except as permitted by the
Right.
commission.
Okay.
So,
All right.
you know, if you want to do something within 100 feet, you need our permission.
Right. Okay.
And then when you get to the 65, that's when we have the variance.
Right. Right.
So,
Okay. It's okay. I get where you're going with that. All right. So.
all right, and now the next one, number 3, except as permitted by the commission through the issuance of and I have in red here, a hardship variance. I think we can leave that in, the word hardship, but that's where people had an issue the last time.
Oh, they did.
Yes, with the hardship. Because we've gone in and we've added, if you go back to the definitions, we added a definition of hardship.
Right.
A condition wherein the applicant would suffer a financial burden, would be placed in danger, or has proven that all other possible solutions have proved undoable. The applicant cannot have developed plans for a parcel which automatically creates a hardship scenario. So
That
you
kind
can't come in with a buildable lot, an unbuildable lot, and say, hey, it's a hardship, you've got to.
Kind of like what Dan was saying.
Yes.
Yeah. I
So
gotcha.
we can leave that in and tie that together as one of the separate items for people to vote on. But I know from the last time we did it that people felt that that was a little bit of overreach.
Yeah, the last line I like of the definition helps with the timeline of things, because people will say, well, you know, what am I gonna do with this property now? It's like, well, if you had planned to build a house there, you know, and you didn't do your due diligence to find out what the code allowed for in the town, then that is again self-imposed.
Like if you bought the property with the intention of building a house.
You
then
bought the property.
You bought it, right? It's
You
like
bought
buying
the
a car
property
without
without
an
reading
engine.
the
Right,
rules.
Right, I get it, right.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean,
and you bought something that doesn't
is it gonna work?
conform.
Is it gonna work?
And you're buying yourself into a hardship, which we don't allow, because then
Okay.
anybody can do anything and claim hardship. So we'll keep that in as a separate item. I will tie those two together, that the word hardship in number 3 plus the definition of hardship in
Do you think you should put, after hardship in parentheses, say, see definition, you know, so it's understood when they look at it at the town meeting? No,
I don't think so.
no, okay.
We can, we're gonna have to flesh out what the exact article, or what the part of that article will be, so the definition will be there.
Okay.
That will be part of it. And then continuing on in number 3, I've struck out the words build or enlarge any structure, parking lot, or impervious surface, and replace that with the same language from the 100-foot buffer zone, which is stricter. So anything that you need our permission to do within the 100-foot, you would now need a variance to do within the 65. Because right now, the bylaw is sort of a structure or a parking lot or an impervious surface. There's not much else there. So you still need our permission because it's within 100 feet. But,
It doesn't spell it out exactly, right?
well, no, but
Yeah.
the 100-foot takes
You're right.
precedent.
Right.
But giving our permission is less stressful than giving a variance. So I want there to be a tougher ledge to climb on the 65-foot. So I want any alteration within the 65-foot to create a variance. Anything you need permission for at 100 feet, you need a variance at 65. So changing that language makes them both the same. So that's why I have that in there. It makes it a bit stricter, but it makes it more equitable and easier to understand. and frankly, gives us less wiggle room. So is everyone okay with that?
Mhm. I am.
Yeah. All right.
It's a step.
Hmm?
It's a step.
Baby steps.
Yeah.
Hey, that's how you have to do it.
Yeah.
What did you call kids earlier today in the other meeting?
Ankle biters?
Yeah. There's a change on number 4, except as permitted by the commission through the issuance of variance as defined in section 5 of this bylaw, blah, blah, blah. And then in red, it says, unless the residents and the bog are on the same parcel of land under singular ownership and will remain as such. I'm gonna strike that.
Good.
Because it just caused so much confusion at the last meeting. So we'll just leave it as it is.
So
And-
get rid of the red.
What was the reason for doing that to begin with?
The reason was there was a property on Bow Street where a person wanted to build a home right next to, adjacent to cranberry bogs they had purchased. And they basically said, we're gonna own these bogs forever. So we wanted one way to codify that, as making sure that that was the precedent that was set and that was the rule that had to be followed. But it raised more questions than
Well, yeah, it
answers.
doesn't really protect wetlands either, you know, but
Well,
by doing that.
no, it doesn't.
Right, so I mean, it doesn't look, I don't know, I'm glad you're taking it out.
Yeah, so we're taking that. So under exceptions of public utilities, there were no changes. If you get to filing procedures, 9.2.2.1, number 4, we put in a, and this is, Gary, is where you said, see, the request for determination of applicability shall be accompanied by a check or money order made payable to the town of Carver for $75. This is where you say, check the
Just see the fee schedule, because every time it changes,
What
you're gonna
section you
have
on
to
there?
change this.
9.2.2.1, request for, request for determination of RDA.
Yeah,
All
75.
right, number 4. So
yeah.
we're gonna say here to see, what is it, pricing chart?
Fee schedule.
Fee
Yeah,
schedule.
that's what we call it.
So we'll have to include the fee schedule in this. All right. So nothing after that. On the next page, number 5, the NOI shall be accompanied by a fee, and again, we're just gonna change that to say, you know, based on the attached fee schedule.
On 9.2.2.2, on number 3, you've got 8 complete copies.
Yeah.
Do they really need that many?
Well, do you just need one?
Well, for the plans, you guys all get one, so I need at least just 5 or 6.
Okay.
But that saves quite a bit of paper.
Next year? Change it next year? I'm trying to keep the changes.
Okay, all right,
in
I'm
there.
just,
Oh,
All right?
sure, that's no problem, just throwing it out there.
The less time we
All right,
are in
all
front
right.
of
oh,
the
I
people.
see,
I got
you're
it.
trying to.
Baby
I
steps.
get you trying to.
Yeah.
Baby steps, I got
Yeah.
it.
If it's not a problem for a year, I would just let it go.
No sweat, okay.
You know, the less time we have to explain things, the better the chances of getting a lot of these things through.
Gotcha.
The next one, number 6, this is happening already because it used to be that our permitting department would place the ads for the applicant. That doesn't happen anymore. Now, a question for you. Where do these ads go now that there's no Carver reporter?
They're going to the Patriot Ledger.
Okay,
And what we do is we tell them who to bill.
okay.
So we write the legal ad and then we tell the Patriot Ledger who to bill.
All right. So this is just changing the language of how the format works, the process works, and it's what we're doing already. So this will be okay.
Okay.
All right?
Yep.
I've got nothing on the next page. Nothing on the next 2 pages. Under 9.2, 9.2.3.3, the site plan. I have added here setback lines shall be indicated. I don't know how important that is.
Which one?
9.2.3.3,
Section
the site
14.
plan.
Yeah.
Right?
Number 14, setback lines shall be indicated based on the checklist below. I think, again, that's adding.
Yeah, that's too
We'll
much.
just take that out, leave it the way it
Yeah.
is, so that'll come out if it's
Yeah.
okay with everybody. Nothing under rules.
Is there something in here that distinguishes the work to be done with where the differential between where things are and the work to be done?
I don't understand.
So, as the site was, as opposed, when we get plans as things progress in stages, not just from point A to point B, but sometimes we've gotten proposals where not all the work done is shown because we haven't been furnished what it originally looked like. We only have the proposed project.
Like an existing conditions plan?
Yeah. Is that existing and
I
proposed?
think people are fairly, well,
For house lots and stuff, it's pretty clear
Yeah.
because they ghost it, but all the existing stuff is there. You know, the contours and any buildings and,
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it wasn't
It's just-
that.
It's just sometimes I've seen, unless we specifically look for it on a site visit, they may not list, by the way, yeah, we did take out those gonna plan to take out those 10 trees also. That kind of thing.
Well, I think that, I mean,
Like currently forested versus, what it's gonna look like.
well, that's why we go on the site visit, because the plans do say the tree line. They indicate where they're gonna have the tree line.
But not always where the tree line was.
But that's what the site visit's there. I mean,
Okay.
you would have to assume that, if they were gonna give us a plan showing where the tree line was, that all it would be was a map of contour lines.
Yeah.
Um,
I guess sometimes I'm just not always confident with what I see on a plan versus even when I'm on a site. That unless I tape it out, sometimes things get cheated. Even if it's 20 yards one way or the other. So
Okay, can we,
it doesn't have to be this year, but it's just something
save it
to
for
think
next
about.
year.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, should write a next year list.
That way, at least I get it out of my system for a year.
As is planned. And what was the other thing we were gonna do for next year? It was your, Gary, the other thing that you had said?
I don't have it in front of me.
No,
'cause
that
I'm-
that we're gonna put off till next year.
Oh, that was the thing about the 8
Oh, 8
copies.
copies, okay.
Because that's kind of crazy.
All right. Okay, so moving on. Nothing changed in enforcement?
I did want to ask something though about that.
Yes.
The fine is only $50 in enforcement for any kind of infraction, it looks like, a violation. That's kind of small amount of money, for,
Yeah. So if something is done after the fact, should that not be a enhanced fine or something double tripled if it's documented? We've gone through the process even with them, and it's still they
Yeah, they
still went
still
ahead and did whatever they wanted to do.
One thing I found being around is it's hard to collect a fine.
but if
You
you're
know.
gonna find it, make it like, not $50, it's like.
Well, I know, but the
Yeah.
thing is, whether it's 1,000, it's just hard to collect it. By the time you go, most people force you to go to collections. It's not worth it. So where you can make up in the fine is if they have to do an NOI, a plan, a restoration. That's big money.
I see what you're
We
saying.
consider that a fine. You know,
Right.
it's not up, I mean, but if they have to hire a consultant and plan stuff, say, they're probably out $4 to $6 grand. That's a pretty good fine.
Yeah, but if you even put something there a little higher, like $300, at least it might deter somebody.
Well, that's up to you
yeah,
guys.
yeah.
But you have to read the next one,
Okay, okay.
all right?
Yeah, each day, yeah, I got that.
Each day is a violation.
Violation, right.
So it's
right.
$50 a day.
Right.
It's not $50 because you made a mistake.
Right.
It's $50 a day until it's fixed.
So it's fixed, right? I did read that, yeah.
So next year, perhaps have an after the fact, add a zero amendment to whatever the fine schedule is.
All right, you mean, so have a different fine system for a begging forgiveness as opposed to asking permission?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
All right, that,
Yeah, that's fair.
because, yeah, when I saw the $50, I was like, come on.
Yeah, but per day it adds up.
What's that? I mean, it's like,
Yeah, it does add up day after day.
yeah, per day, I got it.
And when you add a zero,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, if you had a zero. Well,
Well-
especially if you tell somebody to do it some way and they don't do it, they don't do it, you know what I mean? They just
Right.
continue to do what they're doing.
You also, well, no, these aren't bylaws, they wouldn't have to go through the Attorney General. Okay, moving on now to definitions. Under alter. The third bullet down, under on the next page. We've had a couple of situations where people have wanted to either rebuild or build walls right at the water's edge. And there was nothing in the definition of alter that mentioned walls.
And fences.
Or fences. So, just adding walls and fences as something that would be considered an alteration at the water's edge. The next one is the placing of obstructions or permanent, adding permanent or, and the words or structures. And that basically allows for removable docks. You know, people ask about docks all the time, and our answer is, well, yes, if you know, they have to come out in the winter, as long as they're temporary, they're fine. But it should be in our bylaws that it says that. Because right now, it reads placing of obstructions or objects in the water. That means no one can have a dock. Frankly, that's what it reads
Yeah,
right now.
if you read it that way, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so, the next one,
Do you want to put in there like seasonal docks are allowed or something like that?
no, I think I
Just
think
do that?
objects or
Okay.
structures, you know, permanent objects or structures aren't allowed.
Okay.
So I think people will understand that if it's not permanent, that they can do it. And 99% of the people in this town know that, and that's the way they operate, so it's not really an issue, but it should, what people do and what we expect them to do should be written in the bylaw.
and it is in some ways outside of our lane, but I would argue something like tree stands for hunting. You know, I've got no problem with tree stands, but there are some people that have put some permanently in some of the conservation properties, and that according to the state is illegal. You're supposed to have those yanked by the end of the hunting season, and even that you're supposed to actually show evidence that you've checked in on that tree stand. The only reason I bring it up, because I know this one has to do with in water, it's directly affecting you know, habitat of animals, and that part is within our purview.
That's an interesting point. I'm wondering, I don't know if that needs to be a bylaw or if it needs to be a conservation land rules and regulations type situation, especially if we start getting more properties that would lend themselves to situations like that. So perhaps that's something that I don't know,
Yeah, I think it fits better in that category.
and it may not need a town meeting vote.
Right.
You know, we as conservation, as stewards of this land, can set the rules and regulations for that land.
Right.
And I can check with Mr. Fennessy to see if that would require a town meeting vote, but I don't think You know, the recreation department sets their rules for Sampson's Pond and their playgrounds, and that doesn't go through town meeting.
Right.
So I think as stewards of this land and owners of this land, that we can make our own rules and regulations and include that. I don't think that that's something that should be necessarily a bylaw. All right, but we could certainly do
That's
that.
a good point, though.
It is a very good point.
Well, once in a while.
Okay, the next bullet, destruction of plant life, including the cutting of trees, shrubs, flowers, or grasses. And I don't want to get into the mowing of lawns.
Yeah, no.
If a lawn exists, people are allowed to maintain it. I think that is covered, and we'll get to that in a second. But it's covered in state law, and we don't have to have it in ours. The next one is brand new, is alteration would also mean the introduction of non-native grasses, shrubs, trees, or other plantings. So anything that's non-native to this area and could become invasive, we can't allow.
Okay.
All right?
Dan, you must like the one underneath that.
Yeah.
That's in there already.
I know.
So we don't have to debate it. See, now that's an interesting,
The groundwater thing?
changing water temperature biochemical oxygen demand.
Mm.
See, now that's an interesting bylaw, especially with solar going over canals. I mean, that water's not getting the sun it used to get. Changing the temperature. But anyway, we could veer away from that quite a bit. All right, the next thing on this is the hardship, which I read already.
Mhm.
And we'll
Yep.
leave that in there and let the voters decide if they want to keep it in. Is there anything you'd like to add to that, or are you good with it?
No, but I got something that's not highlighted right after that.
Okay, fine, go ahead.
Okay. Recreation.
Yeah,
I'm fine with the definition, although I feel that it leaves half of the concerns out. And whether the verbiage is something to the effect of adversely affecting local wildlife habitat or introducing invasive species through recreational activities.
can you say that again?
Yeah. So activities shall, I want to make sure this is lyrical and everything, right? Activities shall not hinder access to wetlands and related water resources and/or adversely affect local wildlife habitat and/or introduce invasive species. So, somebody has a skiff that they use as a lobster boat and a bass boat, and we see things growing on the hull, and they decide to drop her in Sampson's Pond. That's a problem.
Okay,
So,
all right.
Good call.
but also the adversely affecting local wildlife or habitat. That includes, your fish, your turtles, all those species that people can recreate and motorboat around, but it sort of opens up some other doors that have been discussed in terms of how we can have one definition play a role in creating a safer recreational environment by maybe having this encourage other bodies look at changing the speed limit, having a except for a couple lanes, having a kind of a very specific no wake area, in some of these ponds. You can't control horsepower. You got pontoon boats and things like that, and I don't personally have a problem with that. But when people are ripping it up by some of the ends and corners of Sampson's Pond, where there are some very fragile plantings and wildlife habitat there, that is a problem.
Yeah, agreed. And I'll try to stop doing that. It would require probably or possibly a little investigative on your part, because the great ponds in Carver are state-owned.
That's right.
So I don't know how far we can go in not just us, but other committees that you talked about in recreation or whatever, in kind of enforcing speed limits and
See what kind of jurisdiction we have.
yeah,
I got you.
can we create wake areas, et cetera? I'm not saying we can't do it. I'm just saying that it's that because it's a great pond, or there are 7 in Carver, that what happens on the surface of that water is controlled primarily by the state. Now, whether we can go in and make rules stricter than the state, I don't know the answer. So that's something that
Yeah, I'll check that
we
out.
can do that.
Yeah.
So anyway,
But some of those things lead to things outside of the water too. We're talking about
Oh, I know. Oh, I know.
land use,
Wake-
land
waves.
use too, or
Yeah.
just how people recreate out in the woods, hiking wise. Where it's okay to camp and not camp and things like that. If that becomes a factor, and
right, I'm not
It goes
disagreeing with you.
on.
I'm just seeing how
Sure.
far we can go.
yep.
All right, so let me read this back to you to make sure I got it right. Activities shall not hinder access to wetlands and related water resources and/or adversely affect wildlife habitat and/or introduce invasive species. Correct?
Sounds okay to me. If
Okay.
you guys okay with?
Okay. All right. On the last page, I put in the definition right from CMR of vista pruning. It's redundant because it's already in the mass law. And this is something that people, again, got, what do you mean I can't do this?
Well,
So,
it's good to put it there, because people read this before they read the mass law, I mean, right?
but it got people
Yeah.
riled up.
Oh,
It's the law whether it's here or
right,
not.
right.
So I'm suggesting that we pull it out
Oh, really?
and let them go to the CMR. And we can quote the CMR if they do something that's outside of what vista pruning is. The fact that it's not in our bylaws doesn't mean it's not a law.
So,
Well, what
how
if you
about-
just?
go ahead, sorry, go
No,
ahead.
what if you just put in there vista pruning and said, under Massachusetts law?
I have that from.
I know, but just clearly.
I'm just saying
You-
what
you-
happened the
I
last time.
understand, yeah, I understand.
This is where
Yeah.
this is where the vote came to a dead end.
Right.
So you're gonna take this out or leave
I'm
it?
just going to take it out.
You
Yeah.
should, because it's, like you said, it's redundant.
Yeah.
Because they can always call me and I can go blah, 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 chapter and verse.
I'm trying to, make this short and simple and get things done that we think are important. This is already written law, so.
Gotcha.
Is there some type of umbrella? Because I really like the idea of setting the public up for success in terms of their education of not only state but our bylaws. Is there some sort of umbrella statement that just says, whatever you're planning on doing, note that we have our bylaws and that we are also under the umbrella of the state, which has their own bylaws, and this is the link to that. And then that way we're not listing out bylaws and people don't start.
It's not redundant, yeah.
It's not white noise. People will say, well, if they've been warned, and if they decide not to do their due diligence, then.
Okay, well, this
But
goes,
we played some role in informing them, or informing them that they should be informed.
right. Yes. Going back probably 3 years, maybe even 4. This came up, I'm going to say, in the summer or fall of 2019. And we had a conversation, Brooke and I had a conversation with, I think it was Jim Walsh at the time was the planning director. We had a conversation about having in the following summer of 2020, having an intern come in to town hall and work with the assessor's office and identify all properties that bordered wetlands or had wetlands on them, and put an annotation on the assessor's card saying you are adjacent to or have a wetlands on your property, and any work that you need to do needs to come before the Conservation Commission, so that when people buy a home or when they access their information, that they know
That's a good idea.
that.
It's a
yeah.
real good idea.
And then COVID hit,
Oh, I see.
and we haven't had an intern since.
Oh.
So that's what we were going to do, because we hear more times than not.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that.
Right, right.
So if it's on your assessor's card, and if it's somewhere where you buy a house, buy a property, that you've got wetlands here, and you need to check the not only the Carver bylaws, but the Massachusetts bylaws regarding wetlands protection before you do any work, then that excuse goes away. And then next year, when the fine is $300 a day,
Right.
so
Ouch.
so.
I heard on them.
Well,
No.
yeah.
So,
You
so
don't-
anyway, that's something, so, I mean, that's been thought of, to try to educate the people. And Dan and I were both at a previous meeting earlier tonight where it was the Open Space and Recreation Committee. And we had a discussion that talked about how to inform people in town about things that are going on, especially now that there's no newspaper. And we felt that the town website could be redeveloped into being half business, the business of the town, getting your permits, finding out about meetings, reading agendas, and the other half being this is what's going on in town. Becoming the pseudo newspaper, so
Right.
that each of the committees in town can say, hey, this is what we're doing. But this is also a place where that information could be out there.
And not have it like linked to Facebook or anything, just have a website.
It's the
Right.
town website, and if
Right.
you make it so that people feel comfortable using it and know that it's a place where they can get information on a daily basis that changes and is kept up to date, then they're going to visit it more often, and that's where you get to you start taking the place of the newspaper, because even as the subscription rate of the newspaper went down, it was still the place where people in this town got their information. And
One thing that the town has is a calendar app that right now is managed with the town library that can inform everybody of everything that's going on. All that it has to have is the subscription of businesses and organizations, whether civic or otherwise, in town, and then everybody has a one-stop shop to say, well, I'm interested in conservation stuff or some outdoor activities going on. I'll click on the green filter and
Yeah.
get all that. Recreation is red. What? I don't
Yeah.
know. You know what I'm saying, though.
yes, I do. But people need to know that it's in one place. And,
Yeah.
what we talked about today at the earlier meeting was going to Carver, townofcarver.org, and the first page you see says, I am here for town business, I'm here for town news. And you click on one of those and it takes you in two different directions. And then, now it becomes a place where you get information about things that you want to know about instead of need to know about. You've got both. But, and it's there where we can, get the message out somehow that, how important the wetlands are. And that anybody within 100 feet of a wetland, whether it's on their property or not, is under the jurisdiction or under the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission for any work that's done within that. So, between that and I really want to follow up on the intern idea.
Mhm.
Did you ever think of a brochure to give the real estate agents, and whenever they pass papers on a property, they put that in?
It's part of their packet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and say, hey, if you're gonna do anything, just give this a look over.
There is that pamphlet, on.
We could do that. Yes.
Until the intern thing comes in, so
Right.
at least you start getting some of that out there. It'd be cheap money.
There's
Right.
that pamphlet, it's already done, if you go to the website, the one about wetlands, you've seen that one?
Yes.
It's done.
Yeah.
It was done like 20 years ago almost
Yeah.
now, right? But
Yeah.
at least it's informative. I
Sure.
looked at it, so that one would work.
Yeah, and just put some kind of heading on it. Hey, before you
Yeah.
alter anything, you should contact the conservation.
Or if you're buying land next to water,
Yeah.
you should look at this,
Yeah.
Right, well, yeah, we could do that.
Yeah.
And what I don't know, and I could probably find this out through the assessor's office, is if there is a sale of a house anywhere in town, how does the assessor's office get informed? Does the new owner have to come in?
Right.
In which case, the assessor's office can hand them the brochure.
Exactly.
As opposed to a real estate
And
person.
when we come up with it, I can also put a stack of them outside on the counter,
Right,
you know, in front of my office too.
right. There was one around here at some point.
Yeah, it's on the, if
It's
you go on,
online?
if you go on the
So
website,
maybe
so if you
we
go on the
talk to the
Conservation
town about
Commission
getting them
Yeah.
printed up.
Yeah, maybe, you know, dress it up or, you know,
It
modernize
was
it.
done
or
in
something.
2005, but it looked.
Yeah, but we can, you know,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be fancy.
It's not that out of date, really.
Right.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have anything else on these bylaws? So I'm going to incorporate our changes. I'll do another red line draft that we have for our next meeting, which may not be until January. What I'll do in the meantime is I will go to the select board meeting and get a placeholder for us, so we have a spot in town meeting to get this in front of people. And then when we come back, when either the 21st or the 4th of January, we can vote on the revised.
Yeah, I don't see the folks for 5 Stanley, you know, complaining too much about going to the next meeting.
Yeah,
It's a pool.
Yeah, if we're here for 10 minutes on the week of Christmas, and both things can be moved 2 weeks, then I think we just do that.
I'll shoot him an email. And
Take a little bit of a break. All right, so we're all done with this? You good, everybody? Good. All right, next up is minutes to be read and approved.
What did this say?
Oh,
Oh,
we can.
okay.
Do you want to talk about this? It's not on the agenda, but that could be
We had
the,
talked about it.
it wasn't
last meeting, I
reasonably
think.
anticipated. So, okay, let's talk about, oh, I have my, Dan's proposal for 44 Lakeview Street.
So I should note, this proposal is not necessarily mine, but is, it's a reflection on feedback I've gotten from neighboring groups, organizations, some members from this body, and some of the ideas were mine. But let me just briefly read the note I made here. The Conservation Commission acquired 44 Lakeview to serve as a space to facilitate and promote conservation and outdoor education initiatives. To date, dangerous and diseased or fallen trees have been removed. Our initial plans for use of this space are to create a 3-season meeting place or classroom space in the form of a pavilion, reintroduce indigenous flowers, create bird monitoring program, introduce a tree program, I'm suggesting the American chestnut, and utilize existing space for peaceful walks, picnicking, resting, etc. The actual structural enhancements, and I have rough costs for those, although when I say rough cost, that's before grant and in-kind labor support. A 20 by 38 pavilion, a split rail fence that would separate our property from the next door neighbor is actually, I taped it out, it is 636 feet. And a 12 by 12 observation platform with a resting bench. Resting benches. This would be down by the water and to serve as an observation point for the, yep. And yeah, I have my, you'll see in the map, I'll point these things out for you in a moment. And then I've suggested a floating dock to sort of tie everything together. All the aforementioned are roughly described in the 2-page rendering that we'll review. The American chestnut, wildflower, and bird box programs are to be developed through local and youth programming. Some of those things are actually already underway on other conservation properties, and we'd be able to simply just replicate those programs on this property. Longer-term plans include, but are not limited to, turning the house structure into a dual meeting space. The plan would incorporate green technologies to the house itself as an independent or off-grid in terms of the utilities and actual operation of the building. I say dual meeting space. The structure of the house can very easily be split in two based on where the weight-bearing beams are, and to create two separate entrances and two meeting halls. And they'd be for different groups, whether it be scouts, other civic organizations, clubs that wanted use of the space. They could sign out use of the space just like you would the library, but go through conservation or whoever we decided best served as the steward of this property. The following technologies are being explored to achieve this goal: geothermal, solar support, and composting toilet systems. So all these technologies exist, can be affordable because of how this project is scaled. Maintenance plan can be executed in many ways and in concert with the town and local civic groups, who can take part in a partial role in its stewardship. The spectrum of development leads to an initial 3-season use of space, to year-round support, depending on how development dictates. So again, as I note, these are broad strokes, but if you refer to the fancy drawing rendering I have here, I call it my Elmo drawing. We are going to, the suggestion is to block access to the driveway that currently exists. I think it's, from a safety standpoint, we can take advantage of the fact that there is a drive in between the COA and this property, and actually have parking simply go right into where the fence that chain link fence would be removed. It's an area where the traffic would be slowed down and be much more controlled for both people coming in and egress of people leaving the property. You'll see the green dashed areas. Those are all footpaths, except for where the old driveway is. There's a gate at the actual head of the driveway, and that would be authorized access for the that garage, which has a bunch of potential. First and foremost, it can be served as a shop for maintenance tools. Currently, it houses equipment for trail maintenance equipment that the Boy Scouts use. But also it can serve as a boathouse if ever we wanted to tie in with outdoor recreational activities, to have a place where town people could come in, sign out a canoe or a kayak for the day, that kind of thing.
Well, you put a lot of thought into this.
The pavilion itself, we have preliminary support from Preservation Committee to actually pay for the materials for the pavilion, and we have in-kind labor support from local contractors to actually build it. It is near where the septic was for that property, but this is no longer going to be a residential property, and so we will there won't be any conflict in terms of where that's built as opposed to where the septic was. As we follow the path down, see if I don't know if I missed anything from. Oh, just in the upper area near, it just says picnic area, and it's just like what it sounds like. It would just be an open area that we'd keep, either wild grass or a couple picnic tables for people to be able to hang out there. The pavilion will serve a couple purposes. One, it'll be a 3-season space for actually being able to run classes, but it'll also be an area for people. We'll have picnic tables there as well. But also in terms of access, there's actually fairly good access from the COA's parking to the actual pavilion in terms of not being able to go uphill or downhill. It's fairly even where their parking is. And so this would be not just serving outdoor education programming that this property may be running, but also a space for seniors to be able to sign that space out for a chair yoga class or some type of other meeting event that they might want to have outdoors, in a safe but protected space from weather.
Now, what are you thinking about for bathrooms, like porta potties or something, if you're getting rid of the leach field?
Yeah, so that's where I was introducing the idea of the composting toilet system.
You like the Clivus mulching, those type of, cool.
Yeah. So as we travel down the footpath, past this initial tree line that really splits the property in two, you'll see I have a winding path. I like people to, the idea is for people to kind of take their time traveling through the property, and in each bend, we can have clutches or groups of indigenous wildflowers planted there. And you'll see along the fence lines, one, we have our American chestnut program plantings. I just put 5 there, but whatever, that can be rolled out in a lot of different ways. And then down over by the split rail fence, had some examples of where some bird boxes could go for a monitoring program. And there are some programs with the school that would be able to integrate what they're actually doing academically to getting actual field time in a controlled environment, and have this pavilion serve as their classroom space for that field day. As we come down, there's a split going right to the floating dock where we had tree work. We had a lot of dead trees down by the water line, and some of those have been removed to the point where 2 of the major stumps will serve as a nice anchoring platform for a small little staircase to get to the floating dock.
How's that look now?
Looks nice.
Good.
Yeah, it's all cleaned out. I know the last time we did tree work, there were some logs left over. That was a bit of an eyesore. All that's gone as well. And then heading down, taking a right to the observation platform. That area has a little bit of a rise, so it's a nice place to have a nice view of the pond, but also having some resting benches there for everyone. Now, I should note that all of this is relatively flat. And so is actually fairly stroller friendly, not quite wheelchair friendly, but can be the path can be tamped down to be ADA compliant as well. But also not losing the characteristics that we're looking for in terms of something that we can call a conservation property. So that's where we are in terms of putting a pause button at it being a 3-season property. But where we go from there, I certainly welcome any input. I have ideas for how to do more, but I think this is a good stopping point, and something. This is something that's very achievable as well. So.
Nice.
All right,
Put a lot of work into it, it's nice.
this is great.
Yeah, yeah, a lot of fun.
Anyone have any comments on this?
I hope it comes forward.
All right, a couple of things that I noticed. I'm not a big fan of having a gate right on Lakeview Street. So I'm wondering if the pathway that you have that goes in front of the pavilion over to the parking lot could become the driveway in, and then removing the driveway and increasing the size of that picnic area up front.
I like that.
So, and then you could put a gate across the parking lot.
You know what I think is a good idea is if we took away that access driveway and actually had the driveway, what you said.
So that would make it, I think, more attractive
Yeah.
from the street. And
You could throw some shrubs up there instead of a gate
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
to block it.
It would look a lot better, that's a good
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah. And then just one other thing that that Dan and I spoke about earlier when I first saw this, and this was, Dan had this in his plan also, but it's not on the drawing, is that there would be additional paths going from the zigzag path
As you get closer to the beach. Yeah.
over to the town property where the town beach is. So you have multiple ways of accessing the property from from the town beach parking lot.
And that entire chain link fence will be taken out, right?
Yes, all of it come, yeah.
Yeah, and as dead debris is removed, dangerous, widowmakers are removed, there are going to be some natural points of entry for all this. So there won't be necessarily a choke point just at this parking, but there's parking all along here already. So we wouldn't have to reintroduce anything
Right.
new in that regard. We just simply layer on what already exists.
Right, and as part of your maintenance plan, you say in concert with the town and local civics group, I would think we could talk to the COA
Yeah.
about their involvement in doing some kind of garden maintenance with seniors coming in to, give them something to do as a, once a week thing is clean out the garden day. I did talk to the director of the COA, and they did have a garden club there a while ago. It kind of went out of favor only because they didn't have, they didn't have a lot of things to do.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe,
Well, I mean,
kind of a
along I'm seeing blank spots. If I was going to fill in, one of the first things I would think about is doing some pollinator boxes.
yes.
And bat boxes too up in the trees.
Yep.
Hey, one thing, do you have a working well out there? You're gonna need water if you're gonna have people out there watering and gardens and everything.
Yep.
We do. I mean, the house was lived in
Right.
up until about a year.
It's just winterized right now.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a working well,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
Cool. Yeah, excellent.
There is. I think it's in the basement.
It is.
Yeah, the well's
Nice.
right in the
Yeah,
basement.
excellent.
So, I think this is a great start. And let's see how we can make this happen.
Yeah.
All
All right.
right, well, thank you.
Thank you. This is great.
Thanks, yeah.
Okay. Did we vote on the minutes?
No.
Okay.
Did not.
All right. So, has everyone read the minutes for November 16th?
Yes.
All right. If so, I will entertain a motion to accept the minutes as written.
So moved?
Second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of November 16th as written. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. It's approved 4-0. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. Everyone in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. We're out. Thank you, Area 58.